it's really hard to not pay attention to opinions, to really base everything on data. But to truly optimize, that's what you need to do.
So why do you think that optimizing a customer journey is so important for an e-commerce business?
Well, I think that there are a handful of things that really brands should be thinking about. So, as I mentioned, been in CRO for about 15 years now. And the more work that we've done to optimize conversion rates, the more we realize that to make real and just lasting gains, you really have to pull way further back than just focusing on the conversion. And there's so many factors that really go into affecting the conversion that start way before a customer even begins to think about purchasing from you. And so every element of your website tells the customer really something about why they do or do not want to buy from you. And so often these digital experiences really confuse the customer and make them just go someplace else, right? They want to be able to recognize these moments along that digital journey that pinpoint really what's causing consumers to leave. And I think that's what brands need to be focusing on the most. And with behind the click, I really don't want to just tell people what tactics to use to fix these issues with their digital journey. I want to show them why these issues occur, right? Because there are checklists out there. There's so many tactics that might work, or they might really just create more issues for you, even though they worked for somebody else. So really, I want people to understand the why behind deploying these tactics and what would work for their specific audience on their site. So realizing that decisions online are not logical, but are really heavily influenced by psychological factors is something I wanted to explain and help bridge that gap by applying psychological principles to improving digital experiences. And that's really why people need to pay attention to behind the click and understand more deeply why they should be optimizing their digital journey beyond just a checklist of best practices.
Fantastic. So your book, Behind the Click, and everything you do with the good and all of the conversion rate optimization, it's all grounded in the psychological forces that drive the behavior that our customers take when they're on our website. So I'd love to dig into that a bit more. What are some of the psychological forces at play when website visitors are on our sites?
Wow, I outline about 80 of them in Behind the Click, so we could really take a few of these. But a few examples you could be thinking about, like there are always really 4 main steps that I like to start with. And if you can enact these, you're really much likely better off than your competitors. Right. So the first thing you really should be thinking about is constantly optimizing. Just aim to get 1% better every day. And the optimizations, they'll compound over time. And you'll start to see that lift very, very shortly. You should track and follow data. And most folks in business have gotten where they are by following their gut instincts. And it's really hard to not pay attention to opinions, to really base everything on data. But to truly optimize, that's what you need to do. You also need to talk to your audience, and they are going to show you the way. Unfortunately, what most brands do is they look to their competition and they copy their competition. And what that does is it ends up with a sea of sameness. Everybody really just is going to have the exact same experience, and you're not going to be able to stand out at all. And you're always going to be a step behind your competitors, right? So really want to make sure you're talking to your audience. And fourth is to find outside perspectives, right? I say it's really hard to read the label from inside the jar. So even the best or the largest companies always need help to be able to understand what to change. And if you think about those 4 main tenets and main steps, all the psychological principles will really help you to fall in line with those.
And so that's the psychological principles that we have as business owners ourselves. And it's quite easy to fall into that trap of looking at competitors, isn't it? And really starting to like what they do and approach that for yourself. But then you end up not standing out at all as a company. So how would you go about finding your own voice? Is it all purely based on data?
Well, I think that it's really doesn't matter what you want to convey, right? It really matters what the consumer is trying to do when they get to your site, right? So I think, you'd really be surprised how many of these psychological principles are at play that you'd never even really consider. And if you understand those, then you're going to really get into the mind of the consumer, and that is going to help you win, right? So if you want to stand out and you're doing things like putting really the story of how your company was founded, that's going to connect a lot more than saying, here's our founder and aren't they so great, right? But so many brands want to just get their founder out there and talk about themselves that they miss how it affects the consumer. But the thing is, with most of these psychological factors that I wrote about in Behind the Click is really, there are two main ones that I spend the most time on that I think really apply. And the first is choice overload, right? So this is the tendency for people to become more overwhelmed when they face too many options. So if you think about that, really just, you need to simplify. And if you can simplify the site and the experience, you're going to be much better off. And most brands want to continue to market to consumers when they get to their site, and that complicates it. That makes the consumer have so much cognitive overload. They have to sit there and think about what they want to do next instead of coming to the site and saying, I'm here to solve my pain or need. Can this brand help me do that? And by doing that, you're going to avoid the second issue that is prevalent throughout the book, and that's decision fatigue. Right? This is what causes people to just stop making decisions because they have been asked to make so many already that you have all these choices. You're overloaded with those choices. You keep making decisions. Eventually, you're like, I give up. Right? Like I'm just gonna go to Amazon or whatever and search instead of staying on your site. So you lose that customer. Now, both of these I talked about, choice overload and decision fatigue, really cause the customer to close the site, thinking they might come back to it when they're more fresh, but I promise you they rarely do, right? And that's a huge lost opportunity. So if you just think about these fundamental principles that really shape the way that even you and I interact with decisions that we're making every day, you really have a good understanding and empathy for your consumer and understanding the audience. And then at that point, you can use that knowledge to help guide them to the best solution for their problem. Again, they are at your site to solve their pain or need, and then to convert as quickly and easily as possible so they can get on with their lives, right? So if you help them do that in the most easiest and effective way possible, everybody wins because you helped your company reach your goals by getting that conversion, and you helped your consumer reach their goals by solving their pain or need.
Yeah, I love that it's all based in the grounding of the human psychology. Every customer comes to your store with that frame of what's in it for me. They don't need to know about you, the founder's story necessarily, unless it relates to what they are trying to achieve. So always going through your website with that in mind.